boy, Detroit, you are my only hope to stop the 49ers, and you gambled it away. What was this their destiny all along? Let's go ahead and take a look back to the Lions 2023 season to find out if we should have seen this coming. So for the Detroit Lions entering 2023, I had expectations of them making a run. Most people only expected them to be competitive throughout the season, as everyone else was high on the Packers winning the North, and other teams in the NFC just surging a lot more. That didn't end up happening. And in short, the expectations I had were met. I typically like to take more time in recapping these seasons for the teams in these videos, but I have a lot to unpack in the playoff run, so let's just go ahead and breeze by this regular season. So in the regular season, the Lions were pretty solid, and they were pretty consistent too. In September, they went 3-1 with a win over the Chiefs, but a loss to the Seahawks. In October, they went 3-1 once again, with the sole loss being a bad loss to the Ravens, but they managed to rebound. In November, the Lions went 2-1, but they did not look like themselves against the Packers or the Bears, suffering a bad loss to the Bears, meaning that they would be 8-3 entering a critical December and first week of January. And in this stretch, they went 4-2 with a tough loss to the Bears and a controversial loss to the Cowboys. That's already been talked to death, so I'm not going to talk about it here. So this 12-5 season was good enough for the 3 seed in the NFC, which kind of caught me off guard. I thought the AFC would have been a lot more powerhouse-based, but really it wasn't. It was the NFC that turned out being the better conference. But either way, this set them up for a date with the Los Angeles Rams at Ford Field. This game was close, and the Lions did suffer a couple of bad calls. I'm not going to lie. There were a couple of bad ones, one of them costing them 3 points at the end of the half. But the Lions were undeniably bailed out in the second half by some blown calls that would have fallen against the Lions. The two that stand out to me are the no-call roughing the passer and the no-call DPI. But the Lions ended up getting the win. Let them move on. Let them have their fun, I suppose. Still a little bitter on that, but, you know, it all came back in the end either way. That's fine. This would set them up, though, for a date with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, meaning we would see the infamous Jared Goff versus Baker Mayfield game in the playoffs. So how'd the Lions do against the Buccaneers? Well, I don't really have a lot to say on this game. They got a pretty big win over the Bucs, mostly carried by a massive fourth quarter, as the game was tied after each of the first 3 quarters, meaning they would win 31-23, and that set them up for a date with the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC Championship game. So how'd the NFC Championship game go? Well, it was not the greatest. Actually, no, I'm wrong. It was the greatest. It was the greatest collapse we have seen in the NFL playoffs since 28-3. The Lions took a 24-7 lead into the half, and the Lions were just strangling the Niners. It felt like the Lions were about ready to be Super Bowl bound. But then they had an absolutely disastrous third quarter. This third quarter was absolutely horrible for the Lions. They had 3 possessions in this quarter, and they went as follows. They had a failed 4th down and 2, which I do still stand by that call. I would have done the same thing, despite, the chance they would have had for a field goal to, take an even bigger lead, but I still stand by Dan Campbell on that call. But either way, the 4th down and 2 failure led to a 49ers touchdown. After this, the Lions get the ball back, which they immediately fumble away to the Niners to give them another touchdown. And then the Lions had to punt it on their 3rd possession. This led to a third quarter where they were outscored 17-0, and the fourth quarter was not much better, being outscored by 10-7. This led to a Lions defeat by a final score of 34-31, sending the 49ers to the Super Bowl. The biggest thing I want to talk about, though, is 2 calls that Campbell made that were absolutely horrendous. We'll start with the easy one to get out of the way here. The 4th down and 3 at the San Francisco 30. The score at this time was 27-24 in favor of the 49ers. With the Lions down 3, you would think with a 4th and 3 staring down the barrel of that you would just take the points to tie it up and escape with a tie game after that drive, especially after the third quarter you just had in a rough start to the 4th. But the Lions instead decided to go for it and failed. If it was a 4th and 1, maybe a 4th down and 2, I would kind of understand it. Try to go for the points, put the dagger through the Niners' heart. But 3 yards out, you gotta take the points, man. Come on. The other call I want to talk about here, this is the one we're going to unpack a lot more because it's a lot more critical for the game down the stretch. I want to talk about that run on the 3rd down and goal attempt at the San Francisco 1. There was 1:10 left in regulation while the Lions had all 3 of their timeouts before this play. The game was under 2 minutes at this point, so timeouts are critical. You cannot be burning stupid timeouts. And you were down by 10, so you were hoping either way that you would get the onside, and if not, you were hoping that your defense would be able to force a 3 and out. If that were to happen, you would get the ball back with roughly, 30 to 40 seconds left, assuming you have all 3 of your timeouts. With that being said, knowing that you need a field goal and a touchdown, if you get stopped on the passing game, kick the field goal. That's fine. You need to save your timeouts. 3 points and not getting a full touchdown is worth keeping your timeouts here. But instead, the Lions decide to run it and in turn have to burn a timeout when the run inevitably fails, because of course it does. And that was all but the dagger through the heart. The Lions needed a miracle. They had to score. They had to get the onside. And if those two didn't happen, the game was over. And the Lions did end up going for it on fourth down. They went for the touchdown, a little bit aggressive, which is fine at this point. It's not going to make much of a difference either way. But they end up going and getting the touchdown. But what a surprise, the Lions don't get the onside and it's game over. If the Lions had all their timeouts, and assuming all the timing was the same and the results were the same, then the 49ers get the ball with 56 seconds left. They take it down to about, 35, 40 seconds after the punt, assuming that the Lions can get a 3 and out and burn all their 3 timeouts. This means the Lions have under 40 seconds, which is not a lot of time, I grant you. I mean, it probably wouldn't change the outcome of the game, but it would give the Lions a chance. They would need just 3 points to tie, and they would have had no timeouts, but they still would have been possible. That offense had a lot of firepower to get down the field quickly in a pinch. But they ended up not having that chance because of Campbell's poor clock management and poor game management in that situation. Once again, not a huge knock against Dan Campbell. I like the guy. He just had a couple of, boneheaded calls. And every coach is going to have that. Even the greatest. I mean, Bill Belichick had some. Mike Tomlin has them. You have all these prolific coaches that will make these boneheaded calls from time to time. So I want to clear that up. I'm not saying that I hate Dan Campbell. He's a great coach. He's a great motivator for a team. And he has turned the team around. I mean, I can't take away from that. But that was just a couple of boneheaded calls in that game. Either way, though, Dan Campbell, I hope you learned your lesson about gambling and when it's smart to gamble and when it's smart not to. As the song goes, you gotta know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, and know when to run.